I want to welcome you to this first webinar in what will be a series that's designed to support high school teachers and administrators as you begin work of developing, scheduling, and teaching a personal finance course for every student in California. My name is Dr. Mike Torres, and I'm the Director of the Curriculum Frameworks and Instructional Resources Division here at the California Department of Education. I have a couple of quick notes before we begin. A recording of this webinar will be available on the CDE's personal finance webpage within the next week or so. Throughout the webinar, we'll be referencing the Personal Finance Curriculum Guide and Assembly Bill 2927. You can find links to both of those items in the resources section of your Zoom screen. Click on the three dots on the right-hand side of your control panel at the bottom of the screen and select Resources to find these links. We're pleased to have State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond with us this afternoon. Superintendent Thurmond was a sponsor of AB 2927, which established the new personal finance graduation requirement, beginning with the class of 2031. He'll be joining us later during this webinar. But first, I'd like to introduce a very special speaker we have this afternoon. Since August of 2025, State Board of Education member Vanessa Ejike has represented California's nearly 6 million public school students as the student member of the State Board of Education. She hails from ABC Unified School District in Cerritos, down in Southern California, and she uses her voice and her vote to advocate for student interests in state-level education policy of all kinds, and personal finance is no different. Today, she's joining us to share a youth's perspective on the importance and need for personal finance education in our high schools. I'm very honored to introduce Vanessa Ejike. Vanessa.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Ejike. Again, thank you so much for having me on this webinar. As Dr. Torres mentioned, I proudly serve as a current student board member for the California State Board of Education. In this role, I've been able to use social media and other mediums of communication to publicize state resources and programs that often go unused or unheard of by my peers. One of them being CalKids. Many low-income students across California don't know that they have free funds sitting unclaimed, funds that can genuinely empower them to pursue higher education. I think about graduating high school seniors who decided college wasn't for them because they couldn't see a financial path forward. That student may have had options they never knew about. This is what a lack of financial literacy costs students. Not just dollars, but dreams. Just this past week, my economics teacher assigned to my class a financial literacy project where we had to input questions we had about financial literacy into a Google form and leave an anonymous classmate to do research and answer those questions. As you can imagine, questions such as how to pay taxes, how to repay loans, and when not to use a debit card versus a credit card popped up frequently. These questions were from students who are only months from, if not already, turning 18 and taking out loans. These weren't complex, obscure questions. These are basic survival skills needed to navigate through adulthood. And yet, so many of my peers, the future of California, had nowhere to turn for answers. If you're already struggling with the basics, imagine how unprepared we'll be for what's coming next. My generation is growing up in a world that is changing faster than ever before, driven by advancing technology, shifting economies, and new financial realities that simply didn't exist a generation ago. With new developments like crypto and gig work, it is critical that young people like me are equipped with the fundamental tools they need to make a successful, informed, and most relevantly, financially stable transition into adulthood. This is why this new personal finance curriculum is a game changer. It turns financial literacy from a privilege into a standard right for every single California student. However, financial literacy being a right means nothing if the zip code you grew up in or the background you come from determines the quality of how it's taught. This is why I'm so grateful to everyone here today for the work that you do on behalf of California students and for helping ensure that young people across the state are prepared to not just graduate, but for the real responsibilities that come after it. Again, thank you so much for your time today and your work on behalf of California students. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Torres.
Thank you so much, Board Member EGK, for getting us started on what we hope will be a very practical and informative hour together. As we begin to dive in, I want to let you know what to expect from today's webinar. We'll begin with a brief overview of AB 2927. Then we'll discuss a number of topics around the implementation of a personal finance course. That includes the topics scheduling the course, teacher assignments, the economics exemption provision, timelines for implementation, selecting curriculum, professional learning, and designing instruction. The Q&A feature will be available throughout today's webinar, and we'll answer some of those questions towards the end of our session. Any questions that we can't get to will be answered by email following the webinar. We'll wrap up with information about future personal finance webinars that we have planned for you this coming fall. And if you joined us a little late, I'll mention it one more time, that a recording of this webinar will be posted on CDE's personal finance webpage in the very near future. We'll be sending out a notice on our CFERD listserv when it's available. We'll go over instructions for joining that listserv at the end of the webinar today. In addition, please find the resources for this webinar, the curriculum guide, and the text of AB 2927. You can click on those three dots at the bottom of your screen and select resources. And now I'd like to introduce our other speakers for the rest of the webinar today. Today, you'll be hearing from several speakers. Jeff Allen is the lead author of the Personal Finance Curriculum Guide and a teacher on special assignment for personal finance with Fresno Unified School District. He's going to share information about implementing a course that meets the graduation requirement, whether your district is already offering similar courses or whether you're just beginning on this journey. Matthew Hayes is a contributor to the curriculum guide. He is the History Social Science Coordinator from the San Diego County Office of Education. He'll walk us through the many instructional design considerations that are important as you develop your personal finance course. To help us wrap up today, Dr. Jennifer Bentley, the administrator of the Standards and Curricular Guidance Unit here at the department, will help facilitate our question and answer session and discuss the upcoming personal finance webinars that are coming up this fall that you might want to join us for. Now, before I hand it over to Jeff, I just want to take a few moments to review the elements of AB 2927. The statutes codified by the bill require, in order to graduate from high school, students beginning with the graduating class of 2031 must take a one-semester course in personal finance that is separate, standalone, and not combined with any other course. The bill also established a list of 13 personal finance topics that will make up the content of the course, and you'll be hearing more about those shortly. AB 2927 also specifies that schools are to begin offering the personal finance course beginning with the 27-28 school year as a way of ramping up to the graduation requirement. Now, that doesn't mean you can't start your personal finance course this upcoming fall. It directed the Instructional Quality Commission to develop a curriculum guide and a list of resources. This has already been developed, and the curriculum guide was adopted by the State Board of Education in March of this year. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find a link in the Zoom Resources tab on your Zoom screen. The bill also allows for schools to waive the exemption of the current economics graduation requirement for students who have taken the personal finance course. We'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And finally, the bill establishes 4 qualifying teaching credentials for teaching this course. That includes social science, mathematics, and economics. Oh, and business. Again, there's much more on all of these elements to come. So I'm now going to hand it over to Jeff Allen. Who else better but the gentleman who wrote the Personal Finance Curriculum Guide as the lead author to talk about the curriculum guide. Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. Appreciate all that background and that introduction. And board member EGK, great job, wonderfully done. So yeah, thank you. And I'm here with you guys today because I did have the privilege of being the lead author, and I know for a lot of us this is the very first exposure we have to the curriculum guide. So I think the best way to start is to actually look at the structure. And I actually want to talk about some of the strategy we had and how we organized it before we even look at the chapter content. And that was to try to focus on being as practical and supportive as possible, realizing, like Dr. Torres said, that the state of California has districts that are in very different places right now. Some have existing personal finance courses on the books that they're going to need to revisit and look to new requirements. Some are already piloting, right, based on these requirements, and some are just getting started. Most important, I want you to know that you're exactly where you're supposed to be if you're just getting started, because again, we're just rolling out this curriculum guide. Okay, so to start, oh, and one last thing before I go over the chapter structure, there was an intentional sort of focus on progression too, and how the chapters moved, starting with a why, moving to the what, and then the how. So when we look at chapter one, that's really focused on the why. It looks at the rationale and context for personal finance in general, looks at what is really could be described as a national movement for mandating personal finance in high schools. And then it obviously takes a deep dive into AB 29 and the subsequent statutes. Chapter 2 focuses on the what. And in this case, like Dr. Torres pointed out, there are 13 personal finance topics that are required for any standalone personal finance course in California that will go on to become this graduation requirement, or that goes on to become a graduation requirement. We are going to look at what those are a little bit later and tell you about what resources we have for you there. But that's the what. Chapters 3 through 7 really address the how. So for chapter 3, it's the how does a district structure their course, staffing, scheduling, credential areas, and so on. Chapter 4 is how do you select a high quality curriculum, or how do you adopt a pre-existing course, which might be very exciting for some of you to learn about today when we get to that. But again, that's the how you prioritize these curriculum pieces and how you make the best fit for your local context. Chapter 5 is about how you build capacity in your teachers. These are teachers that are likely going to be teaching personal finance for the first time, so we want to make sure they go into this role feeling confident. So professional learning is key. Chapter 6 looks at instructional design and how to best leverage that for the impact on students. And again, I'm going to pass this topic over to Matt Hayes later on, and he's going to focus more on this. Chapter 7 is all about that next step. After you have your course, how do you continue to build community engagement and enrichment? So now that we've looked at the overview of the chapter, if we could go to the next slide, I kind of want to look at the overview of the implementation timeline. We've already identified that here we sit, again, 2 months ago, the curriculum guide was approved. It's publicly available. It again is in those dots. If you're just joining us, I heard that you can click on the dots down at the bottom where it says more, and that resource is there. Again, some of us are already piloting, some of us are just new to this, but again, congratulations on being here, because no matter where you're at, you're going to get something out of today and be able to move forward. In 27 and 28, I'm sorry, in 26, 27, I'll just jump to the punchline. This is the year where no matter where you're at, you need to have your finalized course, right? Not that tweaks and additions can't be made later on, like with all courses, but you need to have designed your personal finance course with those 13 topics and be ready really by the end of that, or sorry, the beginning of that spring semester, so that you can begin your own process of staffing, scheduling, and so forth. 27, 28 is where the rubber hits the road. This is the first year that you have to, right? You're mandated to offer at least one section of personal finance. And just to slow down and clarify, the mandate is a one semester, one per high school in 27, 28. Now, you're going to hear later on that you have the flexibility to span that over an entire year, but the minimal is at least one section at every high school beginning in the 27, 28 school year. And we'll talk about this cohort in a little bit. Once we move on to the school years of 28, 29, and 29, 30, this is time period for you to be strategic, right? This is where you need to be thinking about how you are ramping up to offer additional sections. You can be thinking about, are you going to be aligning this to a particular grade level? Is this going to be an elective that is open, and ultimately a graduation requirement that's going to be open to 9 through 12? And again, we're going to dive into that. But still time to reflect, refine, manipulate that scope and sequence to best fit your district. And in 2030-31, this is when the graduation requirement for personal finance goes into effect. And it's also the year that the economics waiver can be utilized. And we're going to be looking at that economics waiver in just a minute. If we can go one more. I think a helpful way to sometimes look at this is really the same information, just from a different perspective. If we backwards map that graduating class, right, what we're really looking at is the graduation requirement impacts the class of 31. The class of 31 are current seventh graders. So let's all just take a deep breath right now and realize one of the things we're looking at on this slide is time. But 25, 26, they're seventh graders. Next year, when they're going into eighth grade, that is the year you are, again, going to be building out or finalizing your course. This is a great opportunity for you guys to be messaging to that eighth grade campus and across your system, including your own high school, of what's coming, right? I'm thinking of my own system and thinking of opportunities at move-up days or showcases, parent nights, regional nights, whatever the case. But the more information you can get out there, the better. And again, this upcoming school year would be the perfect time to do it. 27, 28, you'll notice that graduating class of 31 enters high school. That means you have the remaining 4 years, right? 27, 28 is when you have to offer your first section of personal finance. And over those next 4 years, that is your time to scale and make sure you reach every one of those graduating seniors in 31. If we could go to the next slide. So what we're going to do from here, right? That's all kind of general overview. What we're going to do from here is start jumping into some more specific questions and digging in. I'm going to start with this one because it's the one I get the most, and I think it's one that we should have in the back of our mind before we move forward. And that is, are both personal finance and economics required? Sorry that I'm about to read statute to you, but I'm about to read it. So that quote there in the center: commencing with pupils graduating in the 2030-31 school year, a pupil who completes a separate standalone one-semester course in personal finance that is not combined with any other course may be exempted by their local educational agency from the requirement to complete a one-semester course in economics pursuant to subparagraph D. All right, now that I got that out, let's trim that up. Starting in 2030-31, it is the decision of the LEA as to whether or not to utilize the waiver. So if I go back to that question, are both personal finance and economics required? The answer is it is a local decision. But something to take note of is that does not go into effect until 2030-31, when personal finance officially becomes a graduation requirement. So please know, just if you're holding this in the back of your mind right now, yes, you are offering at least one section of personal finance as an elective in 27-28, again in 28-29, and 29 and 30. Beginning in 2030-31, it is no longer just an elective, it is also that graduation requirement, and that's when you can, if you so choose as an LEA, make that swap with economics. You'll notice that last point down there. We're actually going to come back to explain how that's building flexibility and so forth, but that last point, long before you decide this, right? This is a much bigger conversation that should be had with your social science department and your community at large. This is going to have pros and cons, right? So if you are choosing to utilize the waiver in 2030-31, please make sure you've engaged in those conversations about the trade-off of losing economics. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, so now some master scheduling considerations. With, again, maybe that waiver in the back of your mind, you would now start thinking about, okay, the structure of the course. Do you want to offer the minimal, which is that semester course? Does your system lend itself more to a full year course, right? So as you look at, or a combination thereof, your system might offer both a full year and a semester option. If you do move towards that semester course, however, what will it be paired with? What is going to be in that alternate semester? So this is your moment where you can be really strategic as you're brainstorming this. Do you have a ninth grade health class, a five credit health class that you could pair with, again, not integrate, right? Standalone personal finance, but in that alternate semester, could you connect those two? And now all of a sudden you're reaching your student body in their freshman year in 27-28 when they first hit high school. Now that's going to mean scaling really, really fast. You might also have a senior class, a senior portfolio class, or a college and career readiness class, a five credit class that you may be able to pair personal finance with. And now all of a sudden, yes, you're offering that elective in the 27-28 school year, 28-29, and 29-30, but you know that senior year you will capture that class of 2031 in their sequenced course. And you'll notice that I keep coming back to that waiver because I'll use the waiver to kind of demonstrate what we're talking about here. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to look at an example. So in example one here, this is a district that we're just going to pretend is going to utilize the economic waiver. So what they're going to do is well, every district is going to have to do because of the mandate is offer that personal finance class in 27 and 28. But notice they're only going to offer it to upperclassmen. So we'll hold on that for a second and move to the next. So over those next 2 years, they're going to continue to revise and refine. They're going to collect all the feedback from students. They're going to try to, again, create more opportunities for student engagement with outside entities. And so, right, you're just improving that course because you have the opportunity to do so. You're also in the background going to be training up your economics teachers, right? You're going to be introducing them to a lot of professional learning and personal finance and making sure, again, that they're going to feel confident in the 2030-31 school year, where you are now going to have your seniors moving into a personal finance course paired with an American government course. And that would be you utilizing the waiver. There are some obvious benefits to that, right? That is a pretty low impact to your current staffing and scheduling, right? That's going to be more on student enrollment than it is going to be a major change. I haven't discussed yet the credentialing areas, but social science is one of the credentialing areas. So that again tells you that is a place where this can live, and you already know who's going to teach it. It's going to be those econ teachers. The alternate model here, so example 2, if we can go to the next slide. A district choosing not to utilize the waiver, they too in 27-28 are going to offer that first elective course. They are going to decide, like we said, not to utilize the waiver. And so they're going to start looking at repurposing staffing from other content areas to start scaling, right? Again, like I said earlier, this is your moment to see if you're going to try to align it to a particular grade level, or if you're going to make it available throughout their 9 through 12 academic years, or maybe some combination thereof, right? It's a junior or a senior offering paired with one of these things. But these are all considerations you should be making, you can be making now and really design your course next year. If we can move on to the next slide. So who can teach the course? I believe Dr. Torres pointed out it is a single-sided credential holder in one of these areas: social science, like we've been talking about, mathematics, business, and home economics. I want to kind of slow down on this one and just call out something that has been asked multiple times in past situations, and that is about CTE. I do recognize that there are personal finance programs within CTE right now across our state, or pathways that include personal finance content. Please note that right now a CTE credential is not authorized to teach this course. A single subject credential in one of those 4 subject areas only. And so as a result, we're going to, actually, you know what, scrap that. Let's go to the next slide. This is now our major content. Now I want you to realize this is me watering down, right? This is coming up with the core topic. So when you look in the curriculum guide, it is not going to say banking. It's going to give the full explanation and the attached learning outcomes and so forth. But to kind of abbreviate this for us for this purpose, you see that here are our topics: banking, budgeting, employment, and so on. And there are a few things I want to point out. One, they are not prescriptive. So even though you see that banking is the first topic, that is because that's the way it appears in legislation and subsequent statute. You have every opportunity, again, local control, to deliver this in the format that you want. You can go in any order. And even though we're looking at topic 1, banking, maybe that isn't a standalone unit for you. Maybe you do banking. I mean, let's be realistic. Maybe you do, it could be budgeting and banking together, right? Maybe you incorporate these 2 things into one unit. Or even though we're looking at these 12 basic content topics, you end up having 5 units. That is all perfectly acceptable and your decision. The other kind of awkward thing I want to point out is topic 13. You'll notice it isn't a content topic, right? It just says other topics. That is your opportunity in your own LEAs to determine if there's any other specific relevant personal finance content that you would like to incorporate. This is acknowledging that this course does not have to be static. It is, however, acknowledging that this course can only be delivering personal finance content, right? So this is not to be integrated with anything else. But if you guys identify something that should be added because of local context, or identify something that has come out, imagine there's cryptocurrency 2.0, whatever is coming next. If you see a need to incorporate that, that is your vehicle to bring that in. Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, and actually, since we're on this slide, I should be pointing out that this is chapter 2, right? So when you go back to my teachers in the room, as soon as we finish this presentation, jump into chapter 2 and just look at the content you would be delivering and kind of get a feel for what this course could look like and should look like. I'll also point out, again, it has the learning outcomes that are associated with it. This is also where you'll see all the standard alignments. We show alignment with the Common Core Literacy Standards. We show alignment with the Model Library Standards or the Model School Library Standards. We show alignment, obviously, with the National Personal Finance Standards. So there are lots of opportunities here to engage, again, before you might even be ready to build out a course. If we could, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, this slide, if anybody is feeling intimidated right now about what's ahead, this is the one that I hope takes all the pressure away, because there's kind of an easy button built in here. And what we do in chapter 4 is identify high quality free curricula, and we organize it into 2 categories: those of comprehensive providers and those of the specialty providers. And so what we're looking at with comprehensive providers is these are basically, well, they're not even basically, these are pre-built courses. So the guide identifies 7 pre-built courses that offer lessons, or that offer a complete structure that cover all of those 13 personal finance topics, right? They might offer even a little more than that, but they cover California's 13 personal finance topics. And consequently, they come with scope and sequences and slide decks and assessment banks and all the things you would associate with kind of an out-of-the-box program. Of those 7, it's important to point out that 3 of them are also already approved programs, or A to G approved programs. So you could go straight to the you can go straight to the course management portal and pull those courses, and that can be your beginning point, right? That you can already in hours, instead of weeks, months, or years, have a course. That is not a recommendation. That is just saying that is an offering. So I want you to know that that is out there. The other category is specialty providers. These specialty providers are defined by, well, they're specialty providers because they don't cover all 13 topics. They may cover 11 of the topics. They may only cover 1 of the topics, whatever the case, but they are, again, a specialty for that particular or those topics. And so in the curriculum guide, the way we define that is we actually show, okay, topic 1, here are all the specialty providers that you can pull from. And I want to just kind of, in your mind's eye, think about who this is really great for. This is really great for those that already have existing courses that you recognize you don't fill or you don't meet all of the required statutory topics. I'm thinking particularly a lot of the courses that I've looked at don't have anything on philanthropy, or sorry, on charitable giving, which is our topic 12. So you could pull straight from that specialty provider and incorporate that into your existing course and call that good. Or maybe it's behavioral economics because it's a newer field. Whatever the case, again, here is where you can piecemeal fix an existing course or make meets the requirement course. Another thing you could do is take those specialty providers and actually build a custom course, right? I mean, you could section by section take what you feel is the most appropriate and then build the full context of the course around it. Sky's the limit on how you want to use this. Again, pointing out this is chapter 4, and then the only other thing I want to say, again, for time's sake, I just looked at my clock. The only other thing I want to say here is that for those comprehensive providers, we give a complete overview of what they offer, access points, like how do you actually utilize, what's the process to gain access to this, delivery models, platforms, sample lessons. So there is so much information that at just a quick read, you can get a feel for what might fit your particular LEA best or your site best. If we could go to the next slide. So from here, chapter 5, right? Professional learning. It's great that we have these pre-built courses that we can choose from. It's great that we know the topics that we need to cover, and we can, again, through the specialty providers, build those out. All of that is wonderful, but again, we need our teachers to feel confident. And so what we do in chapter 5 is identify everything we could in the way of quality yet free personal or professional learning. Kind of like we did it in chapter 4, again, two categories. We first look at those comprehensive providers and identify any of the professional learnings that they offer, realizing that some have onboarding professional learnings, content professional learnings, and so forth. But we want to make sure that, again, if you're choosing that, you know what they have to offer. From there, we just provide a whole smorgasbord of every personal, I keep wanting to say personal finance, of every professional learning that we've identified. Again, these could be state or federal run professional learnings, nonprofit learnings, and so forth. Uh, the final thing I want to point out on this is a spotlight on next gen personal finance. Yes, they are one of the 7 curriculum providers, but why I'm calling them out here is because they have the largest menu of professional learning. So if you just look at this screenshot on the right with me, you can see that their PD includes virtual PD, which is offered weekly. This could be personal finance authors, I mean, big names, leaders of industry, whoever coming in and having they call it their speaker series, having a one-on-one conversation that later gets turned into a podcast and can be used in the classroom. They have on-demand, more than 50 on-demand modules that align to our 13 topics. And again, you can just filter that way and say, you know what, I'm not feeling great on investing right now or building wealth right now. Let's see what their modules are and go through those. All of those modules are a 1 hour Nearpod that basically takes you through, takes you on a lesson, but that lesson can then be used with your students. Certification courses, they have 12 certification courses, again, with these key topics. 5-week courses, 2 hours a week. And at the end of the day, you've got 10 hours of professional learning. Virtual conferences, I know they offer at least 2 a year, one in around the back to school August time and one in April around Finlit month. And then the last thing is FinCamps. I'll slow down on that one because FinCamps are in-person events every summer. This summer, there are 4 right now scheduled in California in June and July, and there may be more as those fill up. But they are currently located in San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento. I'm missing one: San Diego, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And just, I don't want to speak out of turn, but possibility of also Fresno and Chico. So keep posted on that. And then last slide, I promise, I'm going to be pushing this to Matt. What are our next steps? From my point of view, the next steps are just engage in the guide. I want you to know that everything I have said right now, you can find directly in that guide. And something I know has sparked your attention, right? You're thinking, oh, I need to look at those requirements because of my role here, or oh, I need to look at some of those pre-built courses because I've invested with that. Whatever the case, or if you want to read it from page 1 to page 217, go for it. I promise you will find something that will help you strategically move to your next steps. And with that, I want to hand it over to an amazing colleague, Matt Hayes, who I am so grateful to have gotten to work with through this process. And he is the key author to Chapter 6, all about instructional design. And that is where he is going to be taking you now.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for all that really helpful information. I know that a lot of folks have questions, and I think that you've probably touched on a lot of the issues that folks are really thinking about. So as we transition to this topic here, my goal really is to emphasize the importance of instructional design when implementing AB 2927. I know with a new graduation requirement, there are, of course, many technical issues and a lot of questions that you have about implementing it, where it's going to go in master schedule, who's going to teach it, etc. But I always advocate for thinking about the experience that you want your students to have in this class. So I think a lot about what board member EGK talked about, because those are a lot of the things that I think are really important and we should uplift. For many LEAs, this is going to be the first time that you'll be offering a personal finance course. For some of you, you're going to be redesigning something that already exists. But because of that, I really do see this as an exciting opportunity to develop something that will be relevant to your students. So in the few minutes that I have here this afternoon, if there's one thing that you take away, I hope that you take away this idea that we really do have this great opportunity to create a course that our students really do want to enroll in. So the new personal finance graduation requirement provides schools with this opportunity to create something meaningful for students. In order to be the most effective, the course needs to be student-centered, hands-on, and engaging. Simply said, When developing a course to meet this new graduation requirement, we should start with what we know works for teaching and learning for our students. So to help our educators through this process, the curriculum guide has a number of resources. In my slides coming up, you'll see that I've identified just some of them, just so you have a sense of what's in there. But this guide will discuss topics such as universal design for learning. It'll talk about inquiry, project-based learning, fintech. There are examples, there are vignettes, there are teacher tips, all of which are located throughout the guide. And these give educators a clearer picture of some of the things that we're talking about and what this might look like in a personal finance class. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I did want to take a moment to address the importance of taking an assets-based approach in personal finance. We know that our students will come to our classes with financial experiences already. They have financial knowledge from their home, from their work, their communities, all of which result in their financial behaviors being influenced by some family responsibilities, cultural values and norms, access to institutions and resources. And so building on these will really make the course more relevant and impactful for the students. Just as within any other course, the key here is really to know your students so that you can help them develop and meet their own personal finance goals. Again, you can see that we address this through UDL, culturally sustaining pedagogy, support for English learners, including long-term English learners. And again, you'll see vignettes and teacher tips throughout those sections so that teachers can see how that might be applied in this context. All right, next slide. The other thing I want to focus on is taking a just-in-time approach, because this will also strengthen your course. For example, if you're teaching seniors, elevating topics such as paying for college will definitely make the course more meaningful. So again, we heard board member EJK talk about CalKids, for example. We might also think about other resources that are available for some of our student groups. So thinking about our tribal students, what resources are available for them for college, what resources are available for foster students, what are our community organizations, and what scholarships do they offer locally for our students? So these are things that would really elevate a course for seniors. So topics that such as retirement, which are important and our students will want to know and need to know, and believe me, that comes much faster than you think. But things like college are also right on their mind. So making sure to address those things up front is really important. This is also a nice way to tie into Chapter 7, which focuses on outside enrichment and community engagement, because there are real opportunities to develop connections between, say, in locally in your school, between the personal finance course and your career and college counselors. But also, you can think about the community financial organizations and institutions that are there, and many of them are really excited about this and really wanting to reach out and help and work with you and your students. And so again, the guide has a number of resources that are there and designed to help you think about and work with community institutions and organizations that give you some ideas of what a family personal finance night might look like, etc. And I should also, one thing that I thought Jeff, I know when we talked about this, did a really great job of doing was also connecting personal finance to the state seal of civic engagement. So for those of you who are working on that as well, I would urge you to take a look at that section starting on page 211. All right, next slide. So Jeff just addressed this, but I did want to circle back to it because I think that this is real important in terms of supporting instruction and the design of your new course and ensuring that your students have the most relevant and authentic experience possible. So this may be a completely new course for teachers. I know a lot of our econ teachers have taught and include personal finance in their economics instruction. But that's one part of a bigger class. So There may be new content knowledge for teachers. There may be new instructional approaches that they want to think about bringing into their classes. So I did want to kind of circle back to chapter 5 again and make sure that we do have that spotlight on there. Again, Jeff pointed out that we have references and links to professional development organizations, opportunities that some of the curriculum providers have out there. So please do make sure you take time to look at that. I would also encourage you to seek out local and statewide opportunities. Jeff mentioned the Fin camps that will be offered throughout the state, and I know that there are other opportunities out there this summer. Stanford has a teacher institute planned for this summer. So take a look at those. Begin, for those of you who are teachers here, right, sign up. Many of them come with a lot of support, some with stipends. And for those of you who are administrators, instructional leaders, please share that with your teachers. You can also connect with your county offices of education to see what support they would offer. And then locally, I would also encourage you to create systems for your educators to collaborate, particularly as they are developing new courses, but then long term as they are continuing to stay up to speed with current research, that new, what did Jeff say, crypto 2.0, whatever new developments are out there. They can develop communities of practice, engage in lesson study, go on learning walks, etc. Using all the collaborative structures that we use with a lot of our content areas, I think will be very beneficial for our students or for our teachers as they begin implementing and continue to work on creating courses that all of our students are definitely going to want to take. So with that, I think we're going to dedicate the last few minutes to a brief Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and toss the mic virtually over to Dr. Jennifer Bentley from the CDE to facilitate that portion.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jeff. Awesome information. As you probably have noticed, I've been furiously trying to answer the questions in the Q&A. I have not been able to get to all of them because there are a lot of them. But I just wanted to kind of go over really quickly some of the more common themes that we're seeing, and to also let you know that all of these questions, if you're will be answered at some point. We will make sure that either we answer them in a listserv announcement or we answer them on the personal finance webpage through a frequently answered or asked questions. In some way, all of your questions will get answered. If it's not officially answered today when you leave, it will get answered at some point. So one of the many questions that I've been answering is around the waiver and who decides who gets the waiver, when do you use the waiver, all of that. I just want to say that the waiver is a local decision, so it's up to the school whether or not you're going to give a blanket waiver or you're going to let students decide. That is a local decision. CDE is not collecting any information on who has a waiver, who doesn't have a waiver, or not. It won't be part of any sort of FPM review process. That is totally a local decision for your schools and districts to decide on the ground. Another question that we are getting is around inclusion of other content areas, putting personal finance into other content areas. That is explicitly negated in the legislation. The legislation requires all of the topics in AB 2927 to be covered in a standalone semester-long course. So as of now, you cannot just put it into an econ class, or you cannot just add it to an AP business class. It would need to be its own standalone course that covers all topics in the legislation. Jeff, did I answer that enough, or is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, that was great. I would just say, in addition with the waiver, again, it is a local decision, like you're saying. The language was cleaned up to allow that LEA to make that blanket decision. So some of you guys might be looking at previous language that said that it was up to the individual student. That is no longer in statute. It is the LEA decision. And the other piece of that is just real. I don't pretend to know the workings of every district, but speaking for my own, that process would look something like taking this proposal to our board, getting board approval, and then it is the individual district that is managing their own graduation requirements, state and local, as it is. And so they would just change that in their own information system. And so that is how the waiver would work, right? It would be an internal decision. But the questions, like Jennifer is saying, there are a few in the chat about this. The reason that it can't be utilized sooner is because personal finance itself isn't actually a graduation requirement until 2031. So remember that if you, again, this is all based on the Q&A here, or sorry, the questions here. I am saying that some people want to utilize that economics waiver and they're planning obviously to make the swap into econ. That tells me pragmatically that you probably, again, in 27, 28 are only going to offer that one section. You're probably only going to offer one more section in 20, right? Your choice, but 27, 28, 28, 29, and 29, 30, you're going to maintain a very small offering of personal finance just to refine that course and build capacity in your teachers so that in that 20, 30, 31 school year, you can make that swap, right? And you will also prioritize upperclassmen for all of those elective sections of personal finance so as to not I shouldn't use capture, so as to not reach those kids twice in their senior year. And I know that's somewhat confusing, but I hope that helped clarify.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that response. And thank you, Dr. Bentley, for fielding some questions. I am going to pause the Q&A for now. It's time to take a brief pause for another special guest to this personal finance webinar. I have the distinct honor of introducing a champion of personal finance who started us off with a financial literacy training 3 years ago. State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Torres and Jeff and Jennifer, all the writers, the Curriculum Frameworks Division. I'm not taking any questions, but I'll get you back to the questions and answers. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joining this webinar and has put California in a position to be moving early towards implementation in our personal finance graduation requirement. I was honored to sponsor the legislation to create a personal finance graduation requirement and to work with our colleagues at the Department of Education who created the personal curriculum guide, the personal finance curriculum guide early, I might add, a few months ahead of schedule to help our schools. Thank you to all of our schools who are interested in implementing this. As you know, this helps our students in a tremendous way. There are some who estimate that it can add as much as $127,000 a year more in a young person's lifetime when they learn personal finance, that it helps them to reduce debt in their lifetime. And of course, it helps them to understand the way business works, the way the market works. This is incredible knowledge that all of our students can use. And I want to thank our partners at Next Gen Personal Finance for making all of this work and partnership available, including stipends for teachers who signed up for the early training and the early implementation. And so I want to get back to the Q&A, but just wanted to say thank you to all the writers, to the department, to our partners, and to all of those who joined today's webinar who are interested in early implementation. And I'm glad that California is moving forward with a personal finance graduation requirement. Stay tuned for more details. Thanks for everyone who presented in today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, for your support of personal finance for all students in California. I now return us to our regularly scheduled program, passing things back over to Dr. Jennifer Bentley.
Hi, okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two more of the questions in the chat. One of the questions has been around credentialing and who can teach the course for graduation credit and who cannot. AB 2927 was very specific in which credentials can be applied in or used in the course for teaching. So it mentions a mathematics credential, a history social science credential, a secondary business credential, and a secondary home economics credential. These are separate and apart from CTE credentials. I know there is a CTE business credential, but it is not allowable under the current legislation as a course, as someone who can teach the course for graduation requirement. I understand that there are a lot of CTE people that are upset with this. Unfortunately, there's no wiggle room unless the legislation changes in any way. let's see. And I think another common one. So I just want to say that the curriculum choice is a local decision. The waiver is a local decision. The curriculum guide offers some examples that you can use if you're looking for help for which curriculum to choose. There are some great options in that curriculum guide. Ultimately, it is a local decision and up to your school board to approve the course and for your local legal team to decide whether or not the curriculum you want to use covers all of the topics required in AB 2927. So I would suggest having a deep dive into that legislation that's linked in the resources section of the webinar, and really making sure that if you currently have a course that for personal finance that you're already teaching, make sure that course covers the required topics so that it can still be used to satisfy the graduation requirement, or make sure you are familiar with those topics as you are searching for the correct curriculum to use as you go through the process of deciding where in your schedule is this going to go, which students are going to take this course at what time in their career in high school. All of that stuff, all of those are local decisions. And I would really encourage you to have some conversations with your school board, with your executive teams to decide what the answers to those are going to be. Let's see. Someone has asked me about the FPM. There will be no FPM review of the waiver. So that is a local decision. CDE is not collecting data on who has a waiver, who does not have a waiver, and how that process is gone through. Again, I would encourage you to have a discussion with your local executive team and your school board to decide what the best way forward is for your particular student population. And for your school size, for your teachers and what credential your teachers have. So that really is we're trying to give maximum flexibility within the constraints of AB 2927. Before I move on, Jeff, to the last few things, is there anything else you wanted to hit, Jeff or Matt?
I think you covered that well. Thank you.
I love to hear that. Awesome. Can we go to the next slide really quick, please, Carrie? All right. So I just want to thank everyone for being here today, spending this hour with us. Adding a new graduation requirement is no small feat, and I know it engenders a lot of trepidation and fear and confusion. So the CDE really is working hard to support you guys, our California's teachers and school districts, as much as we can during this transition. And as you gear up for this coming year, for the 2027 implementation of this new course, we're continuing to offer assistance through the continuation of the webinar series. So on the slide, there are different topics that are going to be covered over those webinars, what curriculum options are available, what are some supplementary supports for students, what are some insights from early implementers that we can offer you so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and make the same mistakes that have already been made, professional learning, how to go about that at your local site, and then also enrichment and community engagement through personal finance. So I would suggest signing up for whichever webinar really is something that you need. We don't have the dates currently out yet, so there's no registration information. Be on the lookout for that from a listserv announcement and also on our personal finance webpage. Can you go to the next slide for me, Carrie? Thank you so much. Speaking of listservs and web pages, the dates aren't set for those webinars, so make sure that you sign up for the Seaford News and Events listserv. We'll also have a registration links posted on the webpage whenever they become available. If you have any questions at all relating to personal finance curriculum and instruction, so what's in the curriculum guide, what curriculum should I choose, all of that, you should email the personalfinance@cde.ca.gov email. Any questions about graduation requirements and waivers should be emailed to our High School Innovations and Initiatives office at hsiio@cde.ca.gov. I also just want to give one quick reminder, as Dr. Torres mentioned earlier, the recording of this will be posted on the CDE's personal finance webpage. We will send out a listserv message when it is posted. Somebody in the chat requested the Q&A with the questions, the answers and the questions. We will also make sure that gets posted so that everybody has the all of the information. And again, send us an email. If you have any questions at all, we are here to help you and attend the next webinar so that we can make sure your answers continue to get, or your questions continue to get answered. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us, everybody.